Hi, I'm Tom. I'm a maritime English teacher at schoolship Gan in Stavanger, Norway. And today I'm going to be continuing English for Mariners. I'm going to continue Unit 1A. Last time we looked at the different parts of the ship. This was a review of what I had already gone through with my students in maritime English. Today we're going to go through the people on board, the ranks, the shipboard ranks. That's also a little bit of a review of what we are going through in our class. I'm going to skip over the grammar, present tense, simple continuous. So the exercises in this session are going to be 5 through 7. And then we're going to do some reading 15 through 18. Now, if you want to follow along, I recommend that you have a worksheet with you so you can do the questions on paper. I have a link where you found this YouTube video, so you can download that and print it out. Also, if you want to go through this PowerPoint on your own, you have a link as well to download the PowerPoint to study for maybe a test. Who knows? Okay, let's get started. Exercise 5, I have 10 questions. Each of these, I have 10 sentences. Each of these sentences have two mistakes, two errors. Now they could be anywhere from spelling to grammar, and also vocabulary. These 10 statements are going to review some of the vocabulary that we went through last time. So do your best. 8 minutes, 2 mistakes. Let's go for it.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Alrighty then.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Hasta la vista, baby.
All in good time, my little pretty. All in good time.
All right, we're back. All right, the first sentence, you'd have to be a Gone student to know our ship, but if you see Gone here in the upper left-hand corner, the forecastle is forward in the ship on the bow, of course, and the windlass is usually found on the forecastle. The windlass is what is used to pull up the anchor chain. So on Gone, the windlass is, and it's not after the bridge. If it was aft, it would be at the stern or behind the bridge. The windlass is forward of the bridge. So the first problem was windlass is singular, so we need a singular verb, third person singular, is, the windlass is, and it's not aft of the bridge, it's forward of the bridge. Okay, the second sentence, crew's quarters are in the port side. It's on the port side, on the starboard side, on the port side. But you probably missed this cruise. Oh, here's a nice picture of us pitching into a wave with the bow ahead of or forward of the bridge with the windlass down here. So you probably missed this apostrophe S for crew's quarters. That's a hard one for most people, even native speakers, to get. This apostrophe S is showing possession. crew's quarters are on the port side. So those are the two mistakes in there. Sentence 3, can you take kitchen watch today, please? Well, we've learned last time that kitchen on board a ship is called a galley. Can you take a watch? Well, we don't say what you stand a watch. You can stand the 4 to 8 or 8 to 12 watch, but you take duty. You have duties on board. So the proper way to say this is, can you take galley duty today, please? Every student on board gone has to do duties every week, and one of them is to work in the galley, cleaning up the dishes. Okay, sentence 4. Go through the hatchway and into the deck. Well, into, you'd be a part of the deck. No, you want to go onto the deck. So preposition, again, prepositions are so tricky, but you just have to speak English, listen to English, and you pick them up after a while. But this spelling, typical American spelling, not correct. You should go with the proper spelling, which is tricky, the O-U-G-H. Go through the hatchway and onto the deck. Now you can see here it's one word, here it's two words. I found different spellings online. Okay, sentence 5. You're supposed to be on duty, still to the bridge now. I put a little Norwegian, stille opp. So report. When you're going to show up somewhere, you need to report there. But this first one, your, big confusion between native speakers and everyone learning English. You are with an apostrophe is what's called a contraction when you're taking the you and the verb are together, dropping the A, and you have an apostrophe. This is your, as in possession, your house, your dog. So try not to confuse those two. You're supposed to be on duty, report to the bridge now. Okay, number 6, headway is the sideways movement of the ship. Well, last time, if you remember, we learned that leeway is the sideways movement of the ship. Not to be confused with a thwarts ship. A thwarts ship is a maneuvering into a quay or a wharf using the thrusters. When the ship is being pushed, when it's sailing by wind or water, leeway is the sideways movement of the ship. And again, spelling with this silent E. You don't really hear movie, right? You don't hear the E in it, so you could possibly drop that silent E when you're spelling, but no, English is not easy. You have that E in there as well. Okay, well, let's just look here. What I was saying last time about leeway, we talked about a beam wind. When something comes abeam of the ship, it's coming sideways. So I talked about here's the wind direction, and in sailing they have these different terms for how the wind is hitting the vessel, but beam. So we call leeway when the ship is being blown sideways off her course. And remember I showed last time navigation, that if you want to have a water track, a course that you want to steer 035 degrees, and you're actually going, your actual water track is 0.4 or 040 degrees, you need to counter for the leeway of 5 degrees. Okay, let's go on to the next one. A propeller's axial thrust is like the torque of an engine. Well, we have the apostrophe S, so that works there for possession. Axial, well, it's not thrust. Here it's trust. So that was a tricky spelling. You might have missed that. Thrust. Can you say that? Thrust is like the torque. Oh, and that's really hard to pick that one out. If you got that one, you're pretty good. This is torque, which I'm not even sure if that's a word, and torque of an engine. Can you say that? Torque of an engine. Now, what do we mean, torque of an engine? Well, that's that pulling that you feel, that thrust with the propeller pushing you forward in the water is kind of like the torque of an engine. There's that power moving the wheels. The axial thrust, what we're talking about, is the actual twisting of the propeller shaft, the force on the axis of the propeller shaft twisting the propeller. It's actually giving you that push forward in the water. Not to be confused with transverse thrust. Transverse thrust, if you remember from last time, that's actually the action of the propeller working, moving the boat. So if you have, for example, a right-handed propeller, and you notice this much more going astern than you do going forward, going ahead, but going in any direction, the actual action of the propeller moves the boat. So a right-handed propeller will actually swing the stern starboard, and hence the bow will swing to port, and the actual propeller on a left-handed propeller will do the opposite. It'll actually swing the stern to port, and the bow then will go to starboard. Okay, so try to know those two, axial thrust and transverse thrust. Okay, next one. UKC stands for under keel clearance. Again, we have a singular noun, UKC, or abbreviation here, stands. So that's the most number one mistake most people make in English, conjugation, that you have to have that S for third person singular. UKC stands for under keel. And here again we have spelling, clearance, and it's clearance. It's almost the same pronouncing, but it's an A. I get this one wrong all the time. Okay, number 9. Were you going? No, we're going to clean the ship from stem to stern. Well, again, you need to look out for that apostrophe when you're having two words contracting. We are, were. A lot of people get this confused between where, the place, where are you going, and we are, we're going to clean the ship from stem. That's another word for bow. You can say the stem of the ship to stern. It's not stern with an M, but it's with an N, stern. Okay, one last one. This is actually two homonyms. A homonym is a word that sounds the same, but it's spelled differently and has two different meanings. Well, the first one, there is a hole in the ship. Hole here with a WH means the entire thing, but we're looking for actually a hole, a piece missing, a hole missing somewhere. So that's without the W. So there's a hole in the hull. And the second one, we can use a sail, not something that is for going for a lower price, but what you actually use to catch the wind. So those two sound the same, sail, but they spell differently and they mean two totally different things. All right, great, good job. So let's go on to the next. This is exercises 6 and 7 on page 17. We're going to review the shipboard ranks, the ranks on board. You should know these already, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do this. What I want you to do is match up the rank with the short description of what they do on board, and then quickly after, as you do it, put the rank in the correct department. We have generally three departments on board a vessel: deck department, engineering department, and the steward's department. Okay, 2 minutes, go for it.
You're crazy! I'll be back. Houston, we have a problem.
No, there's no problem here. Okay, let's go for it. First of all, the master was done for you, the captain of a ship. Master is the term that we use when a captain who's received a master's ticket, his certification for sailing a certain size vessel, when he's actually on duty, responsible for the crew and the cargo and the vessel itself. Second, engineer. Well, engineer should be the clue to tell you it's the engineering department. The second engineer is he is the one supervising the day-to-day operations down in the engine department. So if you want to know who's the hands-on boss down in the engine room, it's generally the second engineer, or you could say first assistant engineer. And then purser, well, that's a new word for us. We haven't really heard that before. Well, some ships have a purser instead of a chief steward. It will generally be on passenger ships, a chief steward. Other ships may have a purser. Purser is responsible for accounts, things getting paid on board, among other things. We'll get into this in a little bit later. Third officer, well, that is the deck department. Third officer, you should know, always is the safety officer on board. And generally, officers by rank take a certain watch. The third officer takes the 8 to 12 watch. As well, the third assistant engineer takes the 8 to 12 watch as well. So those two are a pair, always working together. Marine oiler, that's a rating. Ratings are what we call unlicensed crew or seafarers. A marine oiler is down in the engine room, right? Helps to maintain the engines. Basically one of the lowest ranks on board a vessel, marine oiler. Ordinary seaman as well is a rating, what we call the lower ranks, not licensed personnel or crew on board a ship. Ordinary seaman, here they're saying a learner. I guess that's kind of true. You, my students, are going to be apprentices next year. They have taken EMO 50, which is a safety course for learning the basics of safety. Once you have EMO 50, you are qualified as an ordinary seaman, and then they're going to be apprentices, so I guess maybe that's true. Ordinary seaman's a learner. Electrician, technical expert, I suppose that works. We have people that perform certain technical jobs on board. Electrician is one of them. We also have the carpenter on board, motorman, so there are different jobs that require different technical skills. Electrician being one of them. And then cook, that's pretty easy. Sailor, responsible for food. Yeah, up there. So what do we have? Well, in the deck department, we have the master, and then we have the second engineer going in the engineering, and purser would belong under the steward's department. Third officer, back in the deck, and then marine oiler under engineering, down in the engine room. Ordinary seaman would be in the deck department or a deckhand. Electrician actually belongs under the engineering department. And cook, again, in the steward's department. All right. Well, I gave you a little overview here of the actual ranks on board. The one on the right is from Wikipedia, which is, if you just click on it, you'll go to their page. And here you can see that the captain or master, there's different terms. Different ship owning companies call people different things. So, for example, in the Marang software program on your computer, it uses chief mate and second mates. Okay, that could be either one. But your captain is generally called a master when they're actually on duty on the vessel. So the captain stands actually over all the departments. He doesn't really belong in the deck department. He is the master of the entire vessel. So the chief officer or chief mate is the head actually of the deck department. And if you notice, there's no first officer here or first mate. In Norwegian we say overstyrman and første officer, but in English there is no first officer in the deck department. It goes right down to the second, and the second officer is the navigation officer, and then we have the third, which we talked about was the safety officer, and then we have the deck cadets, and then the bosun. Now the bosun, if you look over here to the left now, we have the same sort of, and here Tony Grice has got the master in the deck department. I don't believe that's quite true. But the bosun also is not quite an officer. He's what's called a petty officer. He's still sort of halfway in between the ratings and the officers. When we talk about crew on board a vessel in English, we're talking about people that are not officers. We're talking about the ratings. So here, when we're saying unlicensed mariners, the able seamen and the ordinary seamen, they're ratings. What's the difference between an ordinary seaman and an able seaman? Well, my students, once you pass your fagbrev, your competency certificate, after 2 years as an apprentice at sea, then you will rise in rank to the able seaman. Okay, if we go to the engineering department again, you'll see both Tony Grice and Wikipedia have the two terms, and it's depending on the ship-owning company whether you say second engineer, who is the real hands-on boss in the engine room. The chief engineer, just like the master and the chief officer, they're pushing papers. A lot of their job is paperwork, making sure everything is on scratch. But the second engineer is actually down in the engine room, assigning jobs, making sure what needs to get done gets done. But you can say first assistant engineer as well. All right, and you can see over here Tony is the same thing. Right, I'm not going to go through all the different ratings in the engine room. I just added motorman is another rating. We're going to take that in my regular maritime English class. In the stewards department, again, you have the chief steward, generally found on passenger ships, but you have a purser found on other ships. Chief cook, or just a regular cook, and steward's assistant, people helping out. Okay, let's go on. In exercise 9, what I'd like you to do is try to remember now. You don't have any of the ranks to look at. Just try to guess which rank you think matches the bubble which I'm going to read for you. Okay, A. I was in charge of a ship for many years, but now I work ashore. People still call me captain. Well, that one's pretty easy. It would be the master, right? And that is just a sign of respect. After you've done all that work at school and at sea to become a master, for the rest of your life, you're called captain, just as a sign of respect. Okay, B. I'm responsible for administration and supply. I handle the money on board. The cooks and stewards answer to me. Now, who do you think that is? You might want to say chief steward. If you said chief steward, you'd be right. But in this, we're saying the purser. So responsible for buying and putting on board provisions and actually making sure people get paid. C. I do general maintenance on board ship. I chip, scrape, and paint the hull and decks and keep lifeboats in good condition. Who do you think that is on board? If you said able seaman, you'd be right, able-bodied seaman, but ordinary seaman as well. That's just some of the things they do on board. D. I work under orders from the chief, and under me there are juniors who do daily maintenance of important equipment. Who do you think that is? I work from under orders of the chief. Right. Second engineer, he takes his orders from the chief. He pretty much knows what's going on in the engine room. He's the one that tells other people what to do, and if it doesn't get done, he's the one you answer to, the second engineer. My job is safety officer, and I have responsibility for the ship 8 hours a day. If you remember what I said, it's the third officer that has safety, and he has, for example, the watch twice a day for 4 hours, so that's 8 hours a day. Okay, I help the engineer with the propulsion equipment. Well, that could be lots of people. I help the engineer with the propulsion equipment. That could have been the marine oiler, the greaser, could have been any one of the ratings down in the engine room. I work on board with circuits, generators, switches, and coils. Who do you think that is? That's right, the electrician. Okay, and the last one. I order and store supplies. I'm concerned with galley hygiene and the preparation of foods. So it looks here, I order and store supplies. So the purser is responsible for the money. It's the cook that's actually deciding what we're going to eat and ordering the food accordingly. But galley hygiene, making sure everything is shipshape and clean, just as important as the preparation of food. All right, let's go on. So now, in the past, a ship's log was a book used for recording the distance a ship traveled. Now it is much more. Discuss with a partner. Think about what information is in a modern ship's log. Go ahead and pause this video to have a short discussion with a partner or thinking about, and then when you're ready, press play again. Okay, well this I got from Wikipedia, and it says a logbook is a record of important events, not just where you've been, the distance, but operation. But basically, it's any kind of weather conditions, time of routine events, significant incidents. We've talked about what is an incident. It could be an almost accident as well as an accident. Who was in the crew and what ports were docked at. But especially if there's anything that went wrong. It's kind of like an airplane's black box. The ship's log is used to record if there was anything that's failed, GPS, radar, radio, so that if there needs to be an investigation, the black box and also the log can be used. So if we just look now, this is from 1892. This is an old ship's log kept during a journey to Australia. You can see up here the date, and then the barometer reading, and then the wind and the weather. I think this is the temperature, I'm not quite sure. But here they're giving the latitude and longitude and where they're at and how far that they've traveled. Okay, and now today I have two different ship's logs. This one up on top is a ship log and navigation record where you have the weather and the same thing, time, latitude, longitude. And down below, we have room for notes. Lots of room for notes. So you can say anything, any events, incidents, anything that went wrong, as well as technical information, date, water, wind direction. Okay. So now we're going to do some reading. First, before we do that, I just want to go through some basic vocabulary. First of all, to be at anchor means that the ship is tied up to an anchor. This is not to be confused with mooring. When a ship is moored, it's tied fast, made fast to some kind of structure on land, a wharf or a quay or a pier. But when you're at anchor, the ship is actually with an anchor chain tied up to an anchor. Anchor is sitting in the water. Now, you can have a mooring buoy. A mooring buoy is tied up to a mooring mushroom or a mushroom mooring and with a chain, and you would hook up then to this buoy which you tie up to. So that's different than being at anchor. Now, a pilot, you should know in Norwegian, los. That's the person that comes on board when you're going to go into a harbor or another area of water you are unfamiliar with. Usually, maritime law specifies that a ship must have a pilot entering waters that are unknown. There have been accidents, if you remember this last Christmas. We've had the Hög Osaka, which ran aground going outside of Southampton. It was a ro-ro filled with luxury vehicles, BMWs, Jaguars, lots of money that they were actually able to salvage. Now the pilot in that situation didn't have much time, but instructed the vessel to run aground in order to save the vessel and the cargo. So they are commending the pilot for doing an excellent job in that situation. Running aground is when, as it says, the ship actually runs onto land. And here you can see she tipped to the port side. Okay, head, as in head line, or you can see the bow here. If we say the head, the forward of the ship, we can actually call it the bow line as well, as opposed to a stern line. Stern is the back of the ship, stern. So we can go into our mooring lines later, but you can say it's a head line or a bow line or a stern line. Okay, let's go on to the reading. Now you got 4 minutes. What I'd like you to do is study this entry in the ship's log and then answer these questions. Here we go.
Moo! 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 Moo!
Last night you were unhinged. You were like some desperate, howling demon. You frightened me. Do it again.
I said I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. I said I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Whoa, another acid flashback. Man, I need to be driving a bus right now.
Okay, good morning wherever you're at. All right, let's go on to it. So, as we read this log, Wednesday, the 5th of July, we are at single anchor in Plymouth Sound. Tuesday, 10th of July, 1500 hours, the pilot comes on board. 1530 hours, we weigh anchor and proceed towards the harbor. 1500 hours, the ship grounds on the western side of Plymouth Sound. 17,4500 hours, two tugs lash alongside. They put up the headline and stern line. 1815, the ship goes off into deep water. We make fast to a mooring buoy. 1830, pilot leaves the ship. Okay, so find words in the log that means one. One would be single, single anchor, one anchor. Okay, B, to raise. What would you have for raise? Weigh, to weigh anchor. And don't forget, to heave means to lift an anchor. Okay, to go towards, what word did you have for that? Proceed. So sailing, proceeding towards the harbor. Rope, cable, we use the word line. Mooring line, head line, stern line. And then to tie up, we have two words. Did you find them? The first one is to lash alongside the tug, or the tug alongside us, and to make fast. To make fast is to tie up. What does the log describe? They're talking about an accident, an incident, an accident that happened, a grounding. And then which one of these things does not happen in the log of the 5th of July? Well, it was reversing. No, that didn't happen. Okay, so before you read the next text, work with a partner. Make a list of all the things an ordinary seaman does or do as part of their duties. So you can go ahead and pause this video if you have somebody to talk to. When you're ready, just start up again. Okay, in this text, what I want you to do is, as you read, compare your list with this text. All right? I'll go ahead and read it for you. Text 2. Ordinary seamen work in all departments: deck, engineering, and stewarding. They help with docking and undocking, and sometimes stand watch. Most of the time, ordinary seamen maintain the vessel, chipping, scraping, and painting. They also clean the vessel's interior and help in the galley. Living conditions for ordinary seamen are different from ship to ship. On large ships, ordinary seamen have private rooms and share bathrooms. Smaller ships have multiple berthing areas. With experience, an ordinary seaman can get promotion to able seaman. Okay, so let's go ahead and find a word in the text that means leaving port. Leaving port. Do you see any words? Actually, yeah. Docking, undocking, to leave port. Okay, we can also say to get underway. What three things ordinary seamen do to maintain a vessel? Well, I'm sure my students know this very well. Chipping paint, scraping paint, and then reapplying paint on the ship. What word in the text means inside? Can you find a word which means inside? Yeah, the interior. Clean the vessel's inside, the vessel's interior, as opposed to exterior. Generally, when you're chipping and scraping and painting the exterior of the vessel, but also inside, you're cleaning interior. So what term in the text means crew's quarters? Crew's quarters. Do we see accommodation? Private rooms, cabins is what we say, share bathrooms. Smaller ships have multiple berthing areas. If you remember, I said a berth can also be where you sleep on board a ship. And what word means to go up a rank? To be promoted, a promotion. Okay, well, that's all the time we have for. In my class, we're continuing ethics with the discussion Is there any work on board a ship that women cannot do? There's a big problem for my students, my women students, when they go out as apprentices. I hear that sometimes they're not even allowed to work out in the engine room. They're put on a chair in the engine control room just because of the attitudes on board. Norway, one of the central values in Norway is equality. Equality for races, equality for gender. And for my students, my girls' students, to meet this is quite of a culture clash. So I'm coming back. Is there any justification for this? Is there actually work on board a ship in the engine room or on deck that women physically cannot do? Well, I would really like your opinions. You can go ahead and make a comments where you found this YouTube video. If you think there's any work on board a ship that a woman cannot do, and we'll start a debate. All right, but that's it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Again, if you want to download this PowerPoint, I left a link for you. And we'll see you next time for Unit 1B. Bye-bye.